Good day, everyone. I am Sebastian Lucagbo, the first reporter of Group 3. Ang among topic kay culture blending. 3H of cultural globalization and its impact. So magsugod ta sa pag-define kung unsa ang dictionary meaning sa globalization and culture. So ang akong basahon, globalization is a term used to describe how trade and technology have the world into a more connected and interdependent place. Next, culture. Culture is the customs, arts, and social institutions and achievements of a particular nation, people, or another social group. So our report says that globalization and culture has a connection. So tagaan ta mog idea nganong connected silang duha. So first, let's cite an example. So here is a very simple example. So sa unang panahon, tartanilya. Diba tartanilya pa man itong ginasakyan, pero napagyapon na siya karon. Pero sa una, kay diba tartanilya pa man. So tungod sa globalization, mas ni grow ang atong technology, mas nagka-upgrade. So tungod ana siya na invent ang atong ginatawag karon nga jeep. So pagkakaron ang ato nang ginasakyan kay jeep na instead of tartanilya. So makita na to ang effect sa globalization sa atong culture. Kaya atong culture sa unang nga tartanilya nahimo nag-jeep karon. But it says that there are three scenarios of interaction between globalization and culture. This is 3H, namely heterogenization, homogenization, and hybridization. So, tungod ani mapadulong to sa question kung unsa man yung mga zation, which is this is 3H. So, mapadulong to sa question nga what are the 3H means to cultural globalization? How do these 3H affect and manifest in the Philippine culture? So these topics will be dig deeper by my co-reporter Kenneth Dalion.
Culture and globalization. So globalization can be defined as the process of connecting different countries or individuals living on opposite sides of the globe. Because the majority of today's technology is part of globalization or the changing of things. Like for example, these gadgets that I'm using now um, are the modern are the modern technology which is part of globalization. And as a result of the usage of current technology brought about by globalization, people can interact even though they are far apart. So aside from the purpose or aside sa gamit ng makabagong teknolohiya sa pag-aaral, lalong-lalo na ngayon sa panahon ng pandemya, na we are having an online class, this modern technology can also be used in interacting or communicating to other people, no? Other people living abroad, diba? Since we have this technology, modern technology, and we also have those applications that we could use in interacting with them. And also, globalization is a diverse comprising economics, politics, and culture, among other things. And these aspects of globalization have an impact on both people and society because they influence people. If these components are being or are becoming more globalized, then change is occurring or will occur in between, because people and since people and society are interconnected, and if people are affected by this globalization, society will be as well. So that's how globalization affect people and society at the same time. Talking about culture, culture consists of explicit and implicit patterns of and for behavior acquired and transmitted by symbols forming distinctive achievements of human groups, including their embodiment in artifacts. And talking about this explicit and implicit culture, When we say explicit culture, it is what we can see or hear from a certain culture or a specific culture, like for example the symbols, heroes, and rituals that are typical that we can see in different platforms, like for example in YouTube, Facebook, we can see their a video of different tribes, right, that showing their rituals. So that's the explicit culture. And when we say implicit culture, um, this refers to its underlying values which are not observed. So ito yung mga hindi nakikita, no, ng ating mata or hindi naririnig ng ating tenga, but infer from people's behaviors in the way they interact, work, and communicate. So that's the difference between explicit and implicit culture. And also, the essential core of culture consists of traditional ideas and especially their attached values. So in different culture, they have their different essential core. Since so they have their different essential core of culture, they have their different traditional ideas as well as attached values. Interaksyon ng globalisasyon at kultura ay hindi bago. Sa katunayan, maraming pag-aaral at debate tungkol rito, lalong-lalo na sa epekto ng globalisasyon sa kultura dahil talaga namang maraming usapin patungkol rito. At dahil dyan, ito ay kinategorya sa tatlo na pinapakita ang iba't ibang senaryo kung papaano nakakaapekto ang globalisasyon sa kultura. At ang tatlong senaryong iyan ay tinawag na 3H of cultural globalization. At ang unang H ng cultural globalization ay ang heterogenization. Dito sa unang senaryong ito ay ipinapakita na kahit ang globalisasyon ay unavoidable at nakakaapekto ito in some parts of a culture, ay hindi nito mababago ang core value ng isang kultura, no? Ito ang ipinapakita ng heterogenization na kahit ano pang pagbabago na dumating sa isang kultura ay hindi nito magagawang baguhin ang talagang ugat ng isang kultura, no? Yan ang ibig sabihin or yan ang ipinapakita dito sa heterogenization.
Homogenization scenario. Cultural homogenization is a feature in cultural globalization that refers of the elimination of cultural variety via the globalization and dissemination of a wide range of cultural symbols include not only physical goods but also behavior, beliefs, and values. Cultural hybridization refers to the mixing of Asian, African, American, European culture. Hybridization is a making of global culture as a melange. For example, Louisiana Creole, which is a combination of African, French, and English language. Global restaurant chains like Kentucky Fried Chicken or McDonald's modify their menus to suit the taste of more of different cultures.
Cultural globalization in the Philippines. So what is our culture? What is globalization trying to change? First of all, our culture consists of our language, our sports and celebrations, common traits, routines, music, arts, and the literature. First is our language, that is how we communicate, and what has globalization trying to change with it. Next are sports and celebrations, what has been changed to our sports or celebrations. Are they are they the heterogenization scenario, or are they the homogenization scenario, or are they changed through the hybridization scenario? So next are common traits, routine, the way we eat, the way we dress, the way we address people, and the last are music, arts, and literature. These are the fundamentals of our culture. This represents our and this represents our uniqueness and characteristics. So, why did I include the percentage of indigenous people in the Philippines? Because they consist of 10 to 20% of the population in the Philippines. That is a very significant number, and as of 2010 and as of 2022, the current population of the Philippines is about 112 million. So that is a very significant number of our population, and we cannot generalize anything. Uh, we cannot generalize anything that involves globalization because each scenario will be different for each tribe. And as I said, 10 to 20% of the population is a significant number, and it should not be ignored. Next, part of cultural globalization is migration and technological advancements. Migration uh, accelerates the cultural globalization, and the technological, coupled with technological advancements, these two will provide the influx of globalization from other parts of the world to the Philippines at a much faster rate. Next on my point is the global outlook. Do you ever notice that the current issues in our world are we we hear through it to our phone directly at a much faster rate? That is because of globalization, and it affects our culture, the way we act, the way we our way of life, because issues are are these issues are menacing and must be addressed. So it takes a global effort to do so, to solve these types of issues. So next we're going to talk about the manifestation of the heterogenization scenarios. I have thought of three examples or the manifestations of heterogenization scenario. First is the food. A common staple in our table in most Filipino meals is rice and fish, because rice is common among Southeast Asian countries, even among Northern Asian countries. It is a very common food, and fish is abundant since we are located in an archipelago surrounded by bodies of water. Next is our idea of respect. Each culture has a different idea of respect. Example for us is the way we call ma and pa, the way we the other in Japanese culture, the way they bow, um, and many more. And I cannot generalize it, but we have a different outlook on respect, and, and that has been distinct through our culture for many years and has not been changed by globalization. Next are the tribes. These tribes are stubborn, and they are not affected. Some are not affected, and or do not entirely accept the flows of globalization. So these tribes stay distinct. Next are the manifestations of homogenization scenario. There there are two scenarios in which I can consider there are two examples in which I can consider the that the homogenization nation scenario is present. First are the songs. Over time, we specifically the rap songs. As you can see from the top picture, uh, you can see a Filipino kid rapping, producing music video with some kids behind him, and we can see the similarities below that picture, that a famous artist in the America is they have the same layout, uh, the same people around them, and the similarities are there. And I think this is a homogenization scenario because over time it will become indistinguishable from each other, and through adapting, copying of certain elements, it will become as one. Next is the attire of our our fashion. So, nowadays, uh, we copy our fashion through different countries because through globalization, they can influence us in our way. They can influence our way of life through the way we dress because fashion is ever growing and evolving. As you can see from the left picture, that those are two famous TikTokers. The similarities in their outfit from the right one is very striking. The oversized shirt, the pajamas, the similarities are all there, and I think homogenization scenario will uh, is present there, and over time it will become one and distinguishable from each other. Although uh, there will be differences, but it will be as homogenized into one.
So the next one is the manifestation of hybridization scenario. So today, sa karon nga time, ang Philippine culture kay nanay mix tungod sa mga colonialism sa una, like the Eastern and Western influences. So the Philippines sa una kay was formally divided into collection of nations, islands, and tribes. So tribes karon ng ethnic groups sa karon kay currently 137 ethnic groups. Then ang uban place di sa Philippines kay ginagamit gyapon na lang Spanish or Chabacano nga language. So outside of what is the Philippines right now, each nation has its own identity and some are even part of greater empire. For example, ang Manila sa una kay ina-consider nila nga part sa Islamic State sa Brunei. Then ang archipelago sa Sulu kay part daw na siya sa Javanese Hindu Majapahati, which is the Javanese Empire. So with the arrival of the colonial rule on the island signaled the start of the Philippines as a nation. So the ongoing process of mixing or blending culture is the major purpose of this cultural hybridization. In contrast to a broad process of homogenization, globalization is a sophisticated blend or mixture of homogenization and heterogeneization. So let's talk about the impact of the hybridization in the Philippines. So first, we will talk about what is the positive effect of the hybridization in the Philippines. So because of this hybridization, Filipinos were able to adapt to each master because of the several periods of colonial authority. This made them more flexible and susceptible to persuasion, which contributed to the Filipinos' fast acceptance of English. So another example sa positive effect kay ang kanang evolution sa atong mga batasan o sa atong dawita mo approach sa mga foreign and kanang mga dramas sa mga or novels sa other countries kay tungod sa influences like kanang awato na to nila ang mga kanang salida nga mag-divorce, kanang ipalaglag daw ang bata o kinang mga legalization of same-gender marriage. Saan na kay dili man jud nato na mastorya ng same-gender marriage. Kay lagi ang mga Filipino sa na kay religious kay sila but karon kay comfortable naman kay ta tungod sa mga western influences nga ana day okay ram day mag same-sex marriage pwede ram day na. So which result to globalization as a positive effect. So the next one is the negative effect. So what is the negative effect of the hybridization in the Philippines? So blending cultures unavoidably results in dilution, which implies that particular ways of life will lose their distinguishing characteristics and originality in the name of globalization. Because of this scenario, we will eventually lose sight of what is to be Filipino or what truly means. So another example is that hybridity has caused the country to be cultural nomads. As more Filipinos becoming global wanderers, which is kanang mag-migrate, maglaglag, tourism, or kanang brain drain by tawagan na naman trabaho sa lain nasod, the world will soon come to recognize their adaptability. They will invariably become renowned for that trait. And it might give the Filipino people a trait and culture that sets them apart. And in due time, the Filipino people will have finally found the distinction that hybridity has robbed them of. And
So, in our conclusion, globalization and homogenization are not the same thing. When it comes to science and technology, it is important to remember that people do not accept globalization influence passively. They are very individualistic and have the potential to change an established culture. While science and technology have made the world more international, they have also fostered cultural identity, which mirrors some of the convergence hypotheses. Cultural openness is a phenomenon that acknowledges cultural differences, but not necessarily standardizing or blending civilizations and allowing cultures to benefit from the diversity of other cultures. If we can appreciate the diversity of people and cultures in the new era, we may be able to construct a global community marked by unity and diversity. Every civilization preserves its cultural distinctiveness while observing and interrupting cultural traits from other societies. Organizations must comprehend the cultural implications of these flaws in order to improve the intercultural communication and management. And this is the end of our report. Thank you for watching and listening.